1000万 MLB 翻訳侍選手チャンネルへようこそ。ホールオブフェイム投票で最も注目を集めているのがイチロー選手です。10年連続200本安打を達成した偉業に現地解説陣からも称賛の声が相次いでいます。 CC サバシア投手とともに1月21日の発表を控え、 MLB ネットワークでは特別番組の放送も予定されています。これら現地放送局の様子を翻訳してお届けいたします。チャンネル登録高評価よろしくお願いいたします。
First full week of the new year, let's make it great. JP Morosi, good Monday morning to you. I know Anthony Santander would like it to be a good week. I would imagine he's aiming high, as he should. Have we narrowed in the focus for him first week of January? What do you know?
Lauren, good morning. Yes, as you mentioned, pitchers and catchers report about a month from now.
Crazy.
So it is about time for these major players to sign. And Anthony Santander near the top of the list among the free agent bats. 3 teams, I was told over the weekend, are in that leading group to sign Anthony Santander. The Blue Jays, the Angels, and the Tigers. The Tigers, Lauren, undoubtedly for many reasons, one of which is he probably wants to get in there for the priority Super Bowl tickets before it's too late for the Lions, but I digress. Santander, as Harold talked about in the last segment, as a switch hitter, he would be perfect in that Blue Jays lineup. And they have been very aggressively looking for free agents, both pitchers and hitters. And when you consider Vladdy and Bo, wow, that left-handed switch hitting bat would be perfect in the middle part of that lineup. The Angels, I'm told, they may be a little bit concerned about the asking price for someone like Bregman or Alonso. And Bregman, not really that great of a fit because they've already got Rendon over at third base. Santander, though, seems to be a very good fit in the Angels lineup as well. It's also possible, Lauren, that for certain teams that are still in the market, potentially for Bregman, like the Blue Jays, let's say if Bregman goes to Boston, perhaps the Blue Jays become even more interested in Anthony Santander. So it does seem to me those 3 major bats at the top, Santander, Bregman, and Alonso, all have some relationship to one another.
You were going to talk Lions on this show one way or another. I respect it. JP, I love Charlie Morton. So does everyone else in the game. Not only can he still pitch, but I just think about the impact he'll have on the youth, right? In Baltimore, what impact did that have on the rest of the market, do you think?
Well, there's still a lot of starting pitchers out there in free agency. And I think for someone like Kyle Gibson in particular, the number that Morton got from the Baltimore Orioles is a very strong number on a 1-year deal. And for Kyle Gibson to then compare what he was able to do in terms of innings, there, nearly 170 innings pitched for Gibson. Yeah, the ERA is a little bit higher, but for someone that gives you that reliability, a lot of teams out there right now need that consistency in their starting rotation. Flaherty and Pivetta have the same agent, so certainly a lot of information held in common there in terms of what the starting pitching market looks like for both of them. The one key difference, though, Lauren, Pivetta has the qualifying offer. Flaherty does not, which means it's a draft pick compensation story for Nick Pivetta. Of course, he's a native of Canada. That potentially could be an impact where maybe Toronto is an even stronger option for Nick Pivetta now in free agency. I do think that for the Blue Jays, whether it's Santander or Pivetta, they will find a way to add one more significant piece, at the very least, between now and when pitchers and catchers report to Dunedin, Florida.
I mean, pitching wins in October. You and I have said that over and over again, but you need to score runs. It's a conversation you and I have had plenty of times about the Seattle Mariners. Do you give pitching to get offense? What's your answer to that?
Well, Lauren, it is still a possibility that the Mariners would move Luis Castillo to get a bat, or at least clear some payroll space to then be able to sign a bat, maybe even like a Pete Alonso if they're able to move the entirety of Castillo's contract. A couple complicating elements there, however. Number one, he has a full no-trade clause. And number two, it's a lot of money that he's got on his contract. And we are now approaching a later stage of the offseason to where not a ton of teams can take on the entirety of Castillo's deal comfortably in terms of the overall payroll spot. But Harold said this, and Harold Reynolds, as he often is exactly right. that the Baltimore Orioles and Seattle Mariners have talked before and in recent days about a potential Castillo trade to Baltimore where a younger bat would go to Seattle. That is completely accurate. Now, we don't know if necessarily if the willingness of Baltimore to take on Castillo's money has dropped a little bit because they've now added both Morton and Sugano, but Harold was spot on, and I also believe, Lauren, that Nolan Arenado, as the options for him start to dwindle, especially if Boston signs Alex Bregman, Seattle might be the last best option if he's going to get traded to a contender and not start the season in St. Louis.
When you talk Pacific Northwest, Harold is hanging on your every word to start the week. What about the top of the NOS? Dodgers get Kim. Where are they putting everybody, JP? Break it down.
Lauren, it's a really important question. Yes, Ha-Sung Kim, who grew up as a fan of the Los Angeles Dodgers in Korea. What a great story that is, of course. The Dodgers have such a strong connection there to South Korea. Chan-ho Park, Hyunjin Ryu in the past as well. And now Ha-Sung Kim joining the team as a left-handed bat. Lauren, here's a quick list of all the potential middle infielders for the Dodgers. Betts, Kim, Lux, Rojas, Edman, Chris Taylor. They could probably trade one of them. And if they do make a trade with one of them, Gavin Lux is, to me, the most likely one for them to move. And I was actually speaking this morning with a Major League team official who said, yes, the Dodgers would move Gavin Lux. Because when you think about second base, would that become, if you move Lux, Ha-Sung Kim, potentially Edman, obviously if you've got Mookie playing second and then you've got Edman playing short, then Lux would definitely be available, especially now when you consider the fact that, as Robert talked about in the first segment, they've added Michael Conforto to the outfield. So if Mookie's your second baseman, Gavin Lux is definitely available. And I do believe whether it's the Mariners, potentially the Toronto Blue Jays, a lot of these same teams we've talked about who've been involved in various pursuits, they still want to make the big addition. And Gavin Lux, the native of the great state of Wisconsin, could still be on the move this offseason.
And $100 million renovation to boot. Life is good in Los Angeles. JP Morosi, appreciate the time. As always, thank you so much.
And I'll give you a little background here. 2 years ago, Lux was set to start at shortstop, I believe, after Seager left. Blew out his knee in spring training, missed the whole year. Last year came back, played second base, had a better second half than first half. So give me your take. There are the numbers. How does he fit in with the Reds?
Well, I mean, I think he fits in with the Reds. Reds looking for somebody a little to shore up a little bit that middle infield. You know, they had McLean a little bit in middle infield. Marte struggled a bit last year. Lux kind of expendable in LA with the Dodgers signing Kim. So. The Reds taking advantage of the fact that the Dodgers were looking to shop Lux. And I think we're all kind of, at least I was, waiting for the Reds to do something to supplement their team, too. They, obviously hired Terry Francona at the beginning of the offseason, which was kind of a big surprise for a lot of people. And this is just a guy that they're bringing in that kind of shores up the middle infield for them, second base primarily. Lux, I mean, he's a good left-handed hitter and can spray the ball to all fields, plays, a pretty good defense. He's not going to hurt you over there at second base. So I think this situation also maybe gives him a chance to breathe, knowing that, hey, I'm going to probably be going into a situation where I'm going to get every day at bats and play every single day.
That's a really good point because L.A. had so many infielders and the pressure to win was so intense. You have a bad month, then maybe your job is gone. Matt McLean was there 2 years ago and missed all of last season, and it looks like now if he returns well, he will not be playing at second base. So the other thing that strikes me is that Gavin Lux comes from a winning team. Is he now he's going to be working with Ellie De La Cruz, by the way. That's going to be fun to watch how they figure things out. Is he now going to be able to bring a winning way with him, or is that overdone?
No, I would say it's overdone, but he definitely has had some big moments in a Dodgers uniform, not only down the stretch in the regular season, but he's had some big postseason moments for them in his short career so far as a Dodger. So he has that experience, something that I think probably was appealing to the Reds. A guy that will be able to have a couple of years in the middle of the infield. Has some pop, like you said, he had a rough first half, but really picked it up in the second half in LA with the 10 home runs and the 50 RBIs. But he kind of fills some needs for the Reds. Like you say, brings some of that experience of being on a winning environment, winning team, postseason play, somewhere where the Reds are trying to get to. And someone that Francona will be able to lean on with that experience.
Yep, and the Dodgers, just to wrap this up, Kim at second and Mookie Betts will be playing short.
That's right. It's another edition of Keith Costas's Hall of Fame Spotlight, and let's put a spotlight on this group of players who are on the Hall of Fame ballot for the first time. And once again, MLB Network is your home for the exclusive announcement January 21st. So here in a couple of weeks, we'll have wall-to-wall coverage, including live from Cooperstown. But here's the group of players: CC Sabathia, Ichiro's definitely getting in. CC, I'm assuming, is also going to get in. There's also some Brian McCann. By the way, Brian McCann, his Hall of Fame candidacy, way more compelling than you think.
You know what's interesting,
I'm just saying.
Is I see Fernando Rodney and Ben Zobrist.
Yeah.
You go, how the heck they get on the ballot? And then you start looking at the full body of work.
Yeah.
You go, okay, I get it. I get it.
Well, let's continue that discussion. Let's bring in Keith Costas. And Keith, I know you want to take a closer look at two players on that list, a couple of middle infielders during their playing days.
Yeah, we'll get to some of those more likely inductees as we get closer to the actual announcement.
Yes.
But like you said, Roflo, we'll start with some pairings leading up to that make sense together, starting today with Hanley Ramirez and Troy Tulowitzki. We'll start with Hanley, guys. It's easy to forget that he actually started his career as a Red Sox, came up with 2 games with them, then was part of a big blockbuster trade that sent Josh Beckett and our friend Mike Lowell to Boston. That got Hanley to Miami, and that's where we'll begin. You think about his first 2 seasons, guys, and the combination that he had of stolen base ability and batting average and damage, 50-plus stolen bases and 300 total bases in back-to-back seasons. That's it in the history of the game, guys. Ty Cobb and Hanley Ramirez, and that's right out of the chute, the first 2 full seasons of his career. Just for a little context, only 25 such seasons in Major League history. Acuna and Shohei, the only actives, rather, to do that. Now, we take a look at the total body of work over his first 5 seasons. He was arguably, maybe not inarguably, if you look at these numbers, the best shortstop in the game over this span.
He was a baller, man.
An absolute baller, guys. The only shortstop with the higher batting average in that time, Derek Jeter at .314. The only shortstop with more stolen bases, Jose Reyes. Those 2 players, 125 combined home runs over that span. Just one more than Hanley had by himself. Now, you think about when he left Miami, guys. Traded to the Dodgers the 2012 deadline. He was hurt the first part of the 13 season. But after that, he came back absolutely on fire. And you think about the 2013 Dodgers, that's when this amazing streak that they've been on started of winning the division. And Hanley, obviously a huge part of that. He kept it rolling into the postseason, guys. Think about the DS that year. 8 for 16 with 6 extra base hits in that first round of the playoffs. And the Dodgers were the presumptive favorite to come out of the National League until they met my Cardinals in the NLCS. And this was his first at-bat, if you remember, guys.
That
hit
was
by Joe
not
Kelly.
Accidental, by the way.
Fractured his ribs. He stayed in through that series, but just went 2 for 15 the rest of that NLCS. So you take that out, look at his postseason resume, guys. It's not a huge sample, but a .360 career postseason hitter, and you remove that series, you see on the bottom there, 446 for the rest of his postseason career, removing that series where Kelly drilled him in the ribs. So I don't think Hanley Ramirez is destined for the Hall of Fame, guys, but certainly a great career, and one that's easy to forget with all the great shortstops that have come in the game over the last decade or so.
Yeah, those numbers are eye-popping, and I think it just shows that, I mean, that is an elite player, but to Keith's point, it doesn't seem like he will end up in Cooperstown. But that's not to take away from just how spectacular a player he was.
Well, what happens so much is that we see a guy at the end of their career, and you forget who they were.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you saw Albert Pujols hobbling around to get to 700 and could barely move. when he was a guy that could do everything on the field, put him anywhere. So I love this when Keith goes back and says, let me put it in context. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about Tulowitzki, because Tulo at his time may be the best player in the game.
He had a good run, too.
Absolutely, guys, and kind of a similar story. Great in his 20s, just didn't have the longevity. But we'll go all the way back to the beginning with Tulo. H, you remember this class with your connections with Justin Upton.
Yeah.
How about this for the top of a draft class, guys? The 2005 draft, all these players in the first 11 picks. Wow. You could argue that at his peak, Tulo was as good as any of them, even with 2 MVPs on this board in Ryan Braun and Andrew McCutchen. And you think about right out of the chute, what he did with the Rockies, guys, his first full season, 2007, arguably the peak for that franchise. You could go back to the Blake Street Bombers, but obviously 2007 is when they made the World Series, had the infamous tiebreaker game, and Tulo was right in the middle of all that, guys. 4 for 7 with 3 extra base hits in this game. All the hits were off Jake Peavy, who won the Cy Young that year, and Trevor Hoffman. I mean, this guy, Harold, you said Hanley was a baller. This guy right there with him. He was in the mix with this famous rally at the end that ended with the holiday slide. So just came out of the chute, absolutely on fire in his career. And you think about his peak that I mentioned earlier, guys. How about this? 4 different seasons with 6+ wins above replacement. This is the list of shortstops that have done that in the history of the game. 13 of the 16 are in the Hall of Fame. The only exceptions are A-Rod for obvious circumstances, as well as Nomar and Troy Tulowitzki. So it was just the longevity, guys. You don't stumble into 4 seasons like that by accident. And I mentioned Nomar. Different players, Nomar a .313 career hitter, Tulowitzki the better defender, but just on the surface, a pretty surprising comp here, guys. I think pretty darn close here. Most importantly,
Nomar's a forgotten man.
Nomar is a forgotten man, but most importantly, guys, that bottom line there, both of them as they got into the second half of their career, just had a hard time staying healthy. And you look at Tulowitzki, the game by game over the course of his career, the volume just wasn't there for as great of a player as he was. And the thing looking back, guys, it wasn't like his back started acting up or he had a knee surgery or something like that. I mean, just listen to this list of injuries. Left quad, right hand, left wrist, right groin, broken ribs, left hip, right quad, right ankle, right hamstring, right heel, left calf. I mean, he was a walking IL stint, just did not have good injury luck the second half of his career. But Tulo, like Hanley, just an electric player in his 20s, one of the best all-around shortstops that we've seen in the last couple of generations.
I'm going to clip this off and put it there for the University of Texas baseball team to realize, you know how fortunate and how lucky you are to be working with Troy Tulowitzki, one of the greatest players who ever played this game, and a phenomenal person, but he was such a great player. And the injuries, like you said, really sum it up, or we'd be talking about a no-doubt Hall of Famer.
Well, to your point, H, it's easy to assume that a guy like that, you know, tough luck the second half of his career, made a ton of money, just fades off into the sun. But to your point, to be there in Texas working with this college kids, it's a nice second chapter to kind of his baseball life in retirement.
メジャーリーグの熱い話題が続きますが、いよいよ1月21日に殿堂入りの発表が迫ってきましたね。特に注目は、今年の新規候補者としてノミネートされたイチロー選手です。MLB ネットワークでも絶対に殿堂入りすると太鼓判を押されていて、日本人として本当に誇らしく感じます。MLB ネットワークでの殿堂入り発表の生中継も決まっているそうで、今から心が躍りますね。皆さんはイチロー選手のメジャーリーグでの活躍をどのように見てこられましたか？ぜひコメント欄で教えてください。それでは次回の動画でお会いしましょう。本日もご視聴ありがとうございました。